Now, I've never actually fished this water. I've had a chat with the owner and he's given me a few pointers, which is always useful. I think I'm going to try one short and one long. There's been a fish show at close range, so that's an easy one. I'm just going to kind of put a bank stick in there. If that'll go in, give ourselves a bit of space, and we'll stick another one in to kind of go long in between the margin and the islands there. When I caught my first carp nearly 40 odd years ago, I caught it on a 9-foot rod, 9-foot little feeder rod really. Certainly wasn't a carp rod. When I got back into modern carp fishing 25 years ago, if you weren't fishing with a 12-foot rod, you were pretty much laughed at. 9-foot rods were for kids. And I fished with 12-foot rods for many years. Nowadays, I do all my fishing with 9-foot rods. I absolutely love them. You don't need to spend a lot of money. Just love the portability. It's a 9-foot, 3-pound rod, capable of banking 50-pound carp. What's not to love? Now, I am going to be using 2 rods today, but you don't have to have 2 rods to go carp fishing. If all you can get is 1 rod and 1 reel, you can still catch carp with that. It's far more important to be able to place 1 rod in the right place with the right rig than to have 2 rods. So, in an ideal world, we've got 2 bank sticks solidly in the ground. We've got a simple little backrest here, which is just going to hold on to the butt end of the rod. So no matter how hard the carp pulls, that's not going anywhere. We have got an alarm and we have got a bobbin on. What happens if you can't afford any of that and you just got a rod and a reel? Well, all is not lost. You can still go carp fishing. What I would do, forget about formal bankware, rest the rod on a log or whatever you can, lay the reel down with a handle like that. Get a bivvy peg, anything you can that's going to be able to be solidly driven into the ground, just like that. Now, I don't normally use the bait runner reels, but in this case we are going to turn the bait runner on. That's going to give some line if we get a take. That is going to make a tick, and that ticking indicator can act as a run indicator. That rod is not going anywhere. Carp can't pull that in. If you want to travel uber light and you don't want to mess around with alarms or bank sticks, all you can carry is a bit of tackle, rod and reel. You're in business. I caught my first French carp with nothing more complicated than a bivvy peg driven behind the handle of the reel. When you're just starting out in carp fishing, you really don't need things like big pits or even medium pits. Just a small little 6,000 size reel will do fine. The maximum capacity of these spools are 300 metres of 0.35 mono, and that's absolutely loads. I don't need half of that to put plenty of line to safely fish for carp. A really good option when you're starting out is to buy some second-hand gear. These are some pre-loved Shimanos, and the top brands like that, Shimano, Daiwa, well known for making good quality reels. You know, these things have an aftermarket value, and as long as they're fully functional, then you can save a lot of money doing that. So after the rod and reel, you need some strong mono. What's really confusing about carp fishing is that you've got multiple numbers. You've got a stated diameter and you've got a stated breaking strain. The different manufacturers have different ideas of what that 15-pound actually means. So it's better to choose on diameters. I've chosen 0.35 mono. For the sort of fishing that we're going to be doing today, 0.35 mono is over the top. It's too strong. It's enormously strong, in fact. But I'd rather use 0.35 because 0.35, even if you're not very good at tying a knot, it's going to be strong enough. The other trick that we're going to be using is we're going to be using the mainline as a hook link. The hook link is going to come under more abuse than the mainline, so we need it to be strong. So one product, 2 jobs, and I'm always trying to do that in my fishing. You absolutely do not need to use dedicated carp fishing hook link material to catch carp. You just don't. Most of my carp fishing is actually done with product that was never designed to be used as hook link, either mainline or I use a lot of leader material as well. It's cheap, it's strong, it's robust, and it's all you need to catch carp of any size from any water. So if we're going to use mainline to be mainline and hook link, what other tricks can we use? Well, the lead that I've chosen for this setup is an inline lead. It actually comes with a tail rubber, we can use that, and it comes with an insert. Now, the way that this is meant to be used is it's meant to be used like that. I am not going to use it like that. So my first job is to take the insert out, and we're not using that. But we are going to be using the little tail rubber and the lead, of course. Then we need a bit of rig tubing. You don't have to buy the tungsten stuff. The silicon stuff is cheaper. It just so happens that the only stuff I've got in my tackle box is the tungsten stuff. So a full length of that normally comes in about 2 metre lengths. For most carp fishing situations, 1/2 metre of tubing is plenty enough. I can make one length of rig tubing go across 4 setups. The next thing I'm going to do, and this is going to make sense later, is I'm going to cut a little bit of that off. The next step is to take the rig tubing and cut it at an angle. It's a 45-degree angle like that, and then we're going to press that into the top of the tail rubber so it pokes through like that. Then we take the lead and we go to the other end of the tubing and we thread that on there like that. So we need to use rig tubing in order to protect the last 1/2 metre of mainline, because that comes under a lot of abuse, stones and stuff on the bottom. We also need it to protect the flanks of the carp. If you just take rig tubing out of the packet and hold it vertically like that, it doesn't go very straight and it's a bit of a pain to thread. So the reason why I then take the lead and thread the tubing through it is the weight of the lead straightens the tubing. The tubing is now really easy to thread. The next trick is to cut the main line at a 45-degree angle, and you've got to use a sharp pair of scissors. If your scissors are blunt, then that's not going to work very well. Now, to complete this lead setup, we need a swivel. There's all sorts of different swivels out there. You can buy quick change swivels, you can buy swivels with rings on. It's all very confusing. The cheapest carp fishing swivel that you can buy is just a simple size 8 uni swivel like that. So that's the same on both ends. You get 20 in a packet, and there's no reason why you can't use something simple like that. To connect to the main line, you need a nice strong knot. Now, the easiest knot to tie when you're getting started is probably the half blood knot. To tie the half blood knot, just pull some line through there like that, and then you whip away from the swivel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then you pass the line through the loop next to the swivel like that, and you just draw that down a bit, hold the swivel, and then you wet it. With a nice consistent pull, just pull it down like that. Now, if you pull too hard, you can cut your fingers and stuff, so just be careful. So you wet it to lubricate the knot. If you don't lubricate the knot, it's not going to nest down properly. If you don't pull hard enough, it's not going to nest down properly. If you haven't got a rig puller, then with a bit of care you can use a boiling needle, but you've got to be quite careful because you can break these fairly easily. But with a little bit of a tweak, just might help you get out there, especially if you've got a thicker section down that back end of the needle there. If you push it through like that and do it like that, you are definitely going to break your needle like that. You don't need to cut that knot really short, so just leave a 5mm tag. So all I need to do now is, if I hold the main line above the rig tubing, if I draw that down, you see the swivel goes through, and the swivel's going to get stuck there. When the swivel gets stuck there, what you want to do is you want to slide down the tail rubber over the sleeve. So ideally you want the swivel buried up to the barrel, just like that. And then the lead is going to sit over that tail rubber. And if I just wet that with a very light amount of force, that just kind of disappears up, very, very light force, and then it gets stuck. And that's perfect, that's what I want. So with just the lead and some rig tubing, we've made a very simple and effective inline running ledger. So I've knocked up some rigs in preparation for this session. What I've done, I've just got a bit of cardboard and I've made some classic mono hair rigs on a little homemade rig board, just a bit of cardboard with a couple of slots in it, and it's a great way of just knocking up a load of quick, easy mono rigs, and that's tied with the 0.35 mono. So not only is the 0.35 mono going to be our mainline, it's going to be our hook link as well. One material, two jobs. Now if you see that little piece on there, that actually is half a blowback tube cut in two, and we need that to kick that mono out. That's how the mono hair works. Yes, you can whip under the hair, and I did that for years, and that's okay, but it is a little bit fiddly and it's still kind of can come undone a bit. But if you just use a little bit of rig tubing or a blowback tube or a tiny little hook bead, anything like that will do. So I'm using a size 8 outturned eyed hook. All we do to mount a bait, take a 15mm bait and using a simple bully needle like that, and then pop it on the bait loop and just gently pull that up until we expose the loop. Now I could just put a bait stop on there, but bait stop is just something else to buy, right? There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking a little bit of mono, tucking it through and then pulling it down tight like that. Pull the mono back a bit, tighten it a bit more, and then cut off the other end, and we made a bait stop. Alright, so we've got a bit of tickly bits there, but you'll have something sticking out from a bait stop anyway. That bait is going to expand in the water and it's going to hold on just fine. We're only doing a day session, we only need it to last like that for 5-6 hours. Plenty good enough. So we've got a lead system and we've got a rig. Now all we've got to do is connect the two. The very simplest, strongest and most effective way is simply to tie them on, again just using a half blood knot. So if you can master the half blood knot, then that's all that you need to get fishing really. I don't care that that swivel only rotates around like that. I don't care that this line is gone a bit curly. It really doesn't matter. It's going to catch us a carp. So in terms of components I've used, I've got a hook, I've got the hook link which is also the main line, I've got the rig tubing as a kicker which is also the rig tubing, and I've got a lead and I've got a swivel. So that is just 5 components for a complete rig, start to finish, everything excluding the bait. Now I could just cast that rig out in the water. If I cast it in the right place and I wait long enough, a carp's going to come along. But we can do a little bit better than that for not a lot of cost. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make up a PVA stringer. PVA stringers are not very fashionable. PVA mesh is 14 times the cost of PVA tape. Now, yeah, you can buy dedicated stringer needles and stuff, and that's cool if you want to make really kind of long stringers, but there's nothing wrong with just using your boiling needle to do all of the jobs. And there we go, we've made a very simple, quick and effective 4-bait stringer, and all we've got to do is take the hook, nick it through that loop there, and then if I hold the bottom of the PVA tape and then just slide that up there. You don't want to cast it out like that because that string is probably going to fly off. So if I just pull that up like that, that'll grip onto the shank of the hook. In the water, that PVA tape is going to melt. So there you go, little 4-bait stringer, 1 individual bait, and that's all we need to catch carp. So the reason why I leave space between the boilies is that you need the water to attack the PVA to melt the PVA. If there's no gap between those boilies, those baits would actually become double baits. If you want to fish with a double bait just because you fancy it, you can fish with a double bait on the hair there and then have a pair of double baits, dunk, dunk. So you got like 3 double baits and one of them's got a nasty surprise, i.e. the hook on it. When you're starting out, don't get hung up around feature finding, marker rods, spodding and all that. All I'm going to do is make 1 cast. Well, I'm going to make 2 casts because I've got two rods. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the cast, I'm going to stop the lead in flight, and then I'm going to try and feel the lead down. Now this is an advanced technique that takes practice, but if you can get in the habit of landing a rig like that, it'll stand you in a lot of stead, because it means that you actually know what the rig has landed on, In one cast with a baited rig, by trapping the lead and feeling the lead down, I know how firm the bottom is, and I know roughly how deep the water is as well. So it's a really good technique to practice. Now, before I cast out, I'm just going to pour a little bit of water over the spool. That's going to eliminate the risk of a wind knot on the cast. Mono doesn't behave well when it's dry, basically. We're going to pick a line, we're going to pick a distance. We've been watching a few fish show and stuff, and we're just going to wang it out and see if we can catch one. Yo, big wind, and I do not like that. Huge amount of wind coming over. If I'd have left that there, we'd have got a pickup. It'd have been straight in the island. Not a good plan. So I cocked up a cast. So although the cast went wrong, I've actually accidentally introduced 4 baits into the swim. I didn't like the line, but the distance was quite nice. Not every cast that you make is going to go right, but as soon as I saw that it had gone wrong, I wound the rig in before the rig touched the bottom, and that's really important. If you allow the rig to touch the bottom, there is a risk that the hook is going to get damaged. And the more savage the lake bottom, the higher the risk of hook damage is. So you need to make a really quick decision. Do you abort and wind in, or is it good enough? Can you leave it there? It is a bit easier to use a gate latch needle for doing stringers because the PVA tape's got a width to it. Now, because these baits are only small baits, they don't weigh much. They're not going to slide off the PVA. If you messed up a cast, just dry the rig off. Get a cloth, because if the boil is wet and the hook is wet, as soon as you touch it on the PVA, it's going to melt and you're going to have to start all over again. Right, let's have another go. This time I'm going to correct for the large amount of wind that's sailing over the top of the tree line. So aim right and it should go left. Feel it down, nice. Okay, so I'm happy with the rig position. I'm going to wind it down, pop it on the backrest. I'm going to clip that on. I am going to stick it on the bait runner today. So that's the setting for the main drag, and then setting for the bait runner. Yeah, bit more. So even with a bait runner, I like to make them work a little bit. When you're first starting out, don't worry about things like back leads and stuff. I've just cast that out. I'm fishing a semi-tight line, 40-50 yards. It's not fully slack, it's not fully tight, it's plenty good enough. There's a little bit of a bow in it with the wind, but I'm really not bothered about that. I've got a little drop on the bobbin here, so whether the fish comes towards me or goes away from me, I'm going to know about it. I'm using the clutch to hook the fish. That fish should be nailed before I even get to the rod. So if you get this set up right, it's incredibly effective using the rod, the reel, the main line to do the hooking for you. I'm not relying on the weight of the lead to hook the fish. We've only got a 2-ounce lead on, and we need much more hooking force than a 2-ounce lead can deliver. And there was me saying that both takes have come from the the right hand rod, and the left-hander has just melted off. Now I know on some waters they have rules about, you know, not wading and stuff, but just getting in the margin like this, not hooking them in the water, it really is much safer. It's easier as well. The first thing I'm going to do is going to be proper lively, this one. One of the best things about using barbless is that you can just pop the hook out. There we go. Really, really neat little hook hold. You can separate the rig from the fish. It's the safest way. I know it's tempting as soon as you caught the fish to, you know, net him and then pick the fish up in the landing net, and that's when fish get damaged. Take your time, get organised. Next up, we're going to need a bucket of water. Any bucket will do. Right, normally I'd take a sling, but this thing is both a sling and a mat. I'm literally just going to chuck it in the lake, give it a nice soak in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the net, and to do that I press the end of one of the arms onto my boot. If you press it into the lake bed, you're going to ruin the corners of your net. I learnt that one the hard way. This is only a little carp, of course, but we're going to show him the same amount of respect as I would a 30 or a 40. And if you look after them like that, then in some waters they have a chance of growing very large indeed. And once you've uncovered your carp, what you want to do is you want to separate the net from the fish. He's still an awful lot bigger than the first carp that I ever caught, I can tell you though. A massive mouth on him. Brilliant. I really don't care how big they are. Big or small, I love them all. I've got the water there just to give them a little sluice, and good idea to wet them before you actually try and photograph and wash the foam off and stuff. And you want to hold them, splay your fingers out there so you can hold his pectoral fin, and splay your fingers out there so you hold his anal fin. You've got more control of the fish that way. So hold them low over the mat. Very safe, very controlled. Right, let's slip him back, see if we can get another one. Now, I'm just having a look at the mouth here, and that barbless hook hard was so clean, I can barely see where the hook hard was, to be honest. So I'm not going to bother to put any antiseptic on him, any Medicarp on him. There's just no need. It's just a little pinprick. But if there was any damage, you need to carry some of that stuff to be sure. But yeah, there you go. So this is the rig that caught us that little carp, and you can see that the hair is a bit tangled. That very simple little mono boilie stop there worked an absolute treat. That hasn't moved at all. The little piece of rig tube that I put on there, that's just kind of moved a little bit. That's fine. We can recycle that. That's not a problem. So the first thing that you need to understand, and this is everything really, is that carp hooks are really very delicate. I just kind of offer that up to my finger there. It feels sticky sharp, and it might well still be okay because these fish are quite soft mouthed. I don't normally use the nail test because I prefer to inspect them with an eyeglass, but if it sticks, it's good to go. I'm a big advocate of regularly changing hooks. On my lake, it's one hook a cast. There's no way that this would be reused on my lake, but every lake's different. That is perfectly capable of doing another bite. If there was any doubt about it whatsoever, I would change the whole rig. I'd cut that off there. I'd recycle that bit of rig tube. As it is, that hair is bent anyway, so I am going to change the rig. Even though that hook was okay, I am going to put a new rig on. If you've got a load of rigs tied up, you don't even need to think about it. Just swap the rigs. Then at the end of the session, you can go through your rigs, you can work out, okay, well, what do I need to fix? Is that hook any good? Is that rig damaged? If you get in the habit of just changing rigs at least every fish, maybe every cast if it's a very rocky bottom or whatever, then you will catch far more carp. It is the most overlooked thing in carp angling. And what did it take to catch that first fish? 5 boilies and 1 mono rig. No free bait. I made 2 casts, 2 rigs, and one of them ripped off in about an hour and a half. Carp fishing at its root is really simple. Once you understand that a sharp hook is 1000% more important than everything else, and all you need is some good quality mono, and to be able to tie some simple knots, the half blood. That was a rattle. Then you can catch carp. And you might say, well, hang on, you're advocating changing a hooker cast in some case, or well, that's expensive, isn't it? Well, do you know what the most expensive thing is? Spending money on stuff you don't need. The other most expensive thing is blanking. If you spend all your money on sharp hooks and then the rest on bait, and then as little as you can get away with on anything else, you're going to be a great angler. So I caught 3 carp. How many leads have I lost? Well, I haven't lost any, because I'm using a running inline lead. And how this works is that just tucks in there like that, and as soon as the carp picks up the rig and tightens down the hook link, he'll feel the resistance, and his first instinct is to shake his head. Dunk. There you go. And the lead is sliding off. Carp's running that way. Lead's done its job. It's got the rig out in position. It's held it there while the carp came along, and then it's just given that faintest little resistance, that little prick, and then the carp's hit it and it's off. All of the hooking is done really by the mono. By the semi-tight clutch. Each one of these fish have been absolutely nailed before I've even got to the rod. Amazingly simple, amazingly effective. I think what many carp anglers have lost sight of, the fact that mono is just a giant elastic band. I'm holding about 1 metre of mono there, and if I go from there to there, we've got lots of elasticity. Well, I'll say lots, we've got 15 mil anyway, with just a few pound of force. If I pop that lead off, so that the lead is just free running, look at the amount of elasticity that the lead is building into this system as well. All that lead is doing is just adding a nice little weight, and when the fish pulls, the lead rises up, got a little bit of extra sponge in the mono as well. It's incredibly effective. Hook pulls are a thing of the past with running rigs, if your hooks are sharp. Don't forget, it's not only the weight of the lead that's pulling the line down, you've got the weight of the water. Water's heavy, water is pushing on the mono that's running out to the rig. All of these forces combine to work for you. On a semi-fixed system, if I push this lead tightly into here, so it's like a semi-fixed, in this scenario, the lead stays a fixed distance from the carp's head. And when the carp shakes its head, it has a lever. It uses the lead to basically lever out the hook. If you take that lever point away from him by having the lead slide away, you've got a far, far better chance of landing everything you hook. And you never lose the lead. The only time you're going to lose a lead, if that lead gets stuck, then yeah, you're going to lose a lead. If the main line breaks, then you're going to lose the lead. In the event of a mainline failure, if I just shake that lead off there, if that was broke there, that lead's gone. Now, okay, you lost a lead. If that's disconnected there, then yes, the carp is hooked and he's towing around a hook link, a swivel, a little bit of tubing and some mainline. But by using a barbless hook, as soon as the load, the only thing holding that barbless hook in the carp's mouth is tension. Once that tension is gone, that barbless hook will fall out. This is why I'm a massive fan of barbless, because no matter what happens, the carp is safe. If you look at the elastic effect that this running lead is giving us, I'm only holding out my arms 1.6 metres, my arms aren't that long, 1.6 metres. Look how well that lead going up and down, and it's just pulling that hook in all the time. Imagine what that effect is like in a fishing situation at 100 yards, 50 yards, 40 yards. You've got a huge amount of elasticity. It's actually really hard to lose a carp with a running lead system. One of the things you're taught when you first using barbless is do not let the pressure go off the rod. You must always maintain contact with the fish to keep that hook being pulled in. I got myself in a mess a few times on the river this year, and it's all gone Pete Tong, and I've literally lost contact with the fish. I've got no pressure on the fish whatsoever because I've had to sort other things out. I'm trying to film myself as well, which is ridiculous, I know, but the fish has not dropped off. I've still landed every one because that running ledger is just holding the hook in for me. It's doing the fishing for me. It's doing the playing of the fish for me. Well, number 2 didn't take too long. Just thinking about having a chat about bait actually. And I have not pre-baited this lake. I didn't introduce any free bait to start with. I didn't top up with bait after the first fish. If this goes in the net, which it really should, we'll have 2 fish on the bank. And what have I used? 3 casts, 5 baits, 15 boilies. 15 15mm boilies. You do not need loads of bait to catch carp. We've caught 2 fish on a little day session in about 3 hours. The fish aren't very big, and you know, you'd class it as a runs water. If I were to apply bait, I'd catch more carp, but I haven't had to use a load of bait to catch 2 carp. So this is bite number 2 from pretty much the same spot. I think I was a couple of meters off between my first cast and my second cast, but my left-hander hasn't done anything, and that's all right. We might move it, we might not. It's far more important to stick one rig in the right place at the right time with a razor sharp hook. It can be far more effective than using a load of bait to catch carp. Bait is not the secret of catching carp. Rod hours is not the secret to catching carp. Most of my fishing is done on short sessions. It's all about doing the right thing at the right time, the right place. The most important lesson I've learned in carp fishing is that your rig and your lead setup is the most important thing. It doesn't have to be complicated, it just has to be really effective. You don't need complicated rigs to catch carp, you just need something simple and reliable. And for most of my fishing, it's a mono rig with a running ledger. Could be a swivel lead, could be an inline lead, whatever I need. Whatever I need to get the job done. So that's the end of the session for today. We've had a lovely time. And I want to show you the procedure that I use when I'm fishing with inline rigs like this, because there are a few details to pay attention to. So that's another knackered rig. So job 1 is we cut that off, and all the rigs that have done a bite that need to be inspected and gone through, I just put them on the board the other way. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Rig number 5 will be along in a minute. Then once you get rig tubing wet, you do not want to try and rethread it. In actual fact, if you try and rethread it, you're going to have a real hard time rethreading it. So what you do is you pop the swivel out like that, and then you cut the swivel off. You could just put that in your rod holder like that, but then you've got the lead banging against your rod. You're going to damage your rod. Yeah, you could buy a pouch to wrap the lead in and to protect the rod and stuff, but when all you have to do is you pull off the tail rubber, you pull off the lead, and what you're left with is the main line and the rig tubing. All you got to do is you tie once, twice. It's a double granny knot. Put a double granny knot at the end of the main line like that. That will hold the rig tubing on the main line. There's no way that rig tubing will pop over that knot if you're using something like a 0.35 mono. That's fine, that's great. So with the rig tubing held on the rod, we can now pack down the rod. So little retractable, that slides in there like that. Top half goes on like that. So there we go, rod packed down, reel handle folded away, rig tubing safely retained for the next time. So all you've got to do to retie this, cut that knot off, and then put the lead on, put the swivel on, and yeah, you're fishing in about a minute. So really quick, really easy. You can use the line clip there, nick that on, and that will just retain that like that. We can now put it in the bag.